Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Live Healthy Now. I'm joined today by our guest, Sarah Berthon, who is here to chat with us about chronic illness and disability. This is a really interesting topic for me, certainly on the lens of disability. It's something that I'm looking forward to finding out more about from Sarah. And Sarah is going to share her own personal journey of being diagnosed with ME and how that impacted her as an employee and being able to work, and where that's led to now with Sarah being an entrepreneur, helping other entrepreneurs and workplaces, and something very exciting with the government to raise more awareness about chronic illness and disability and to drive much needed policy change. So welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for welcoming me today, Nicola.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And just before we get into the topic, I'd love to find out a little bit about your own healthy lifestyle by asking what your most impactful healthy habit is, Sarah.
I think my most impactful healthy habit is taking time for me, listening to my body and doing what it needs. So sometimes I feel that I need to go and have a rest, so I'll go and have a lie down. But other times I feel that I need to get some sort of movement into my life. So I'll go out for a walk and get some fresh air. So it's really about listening to my body and what it needs in that moment. And I think that's learning to do that has made a real difference to my health.
I love that because my main program is called Mind Body Collective because it is about helping women to know that connection we have between our mind and body and how we can't just focus on one thing to feel better and to improve our health. And as you said, you've got to a place where that's now really important and impactful for your health. But it's not easy, is it, to do that? And I think sometimes if you're not doing that or have much understanding of what that terminology means, it can feel a bit kind of woo and out there, doesn't it, listening to your body. So is there anything that you could give us a little tip that's helped you to reach the point you're at now where you do know what that means, like what those sounds are, if you like, from your body?
Yes, I think something that's been very important for me is sort of keeping a note of my symptoms, keeping a note of my energy levels, and then tying those to the different activities that I do. So I've now got to a point where I know what sort of activities give me energy, which sort of activities drain me of energy, and those which are a bit more neutral. And knowing that means that I can apply that knowledge to how I'm feeling. So when I'm having a day where I'm feeling really tired, I know that actually maybe not sitting down at my computer to try and get through lots of work is going to work, but actually sometimes doing things like talking to someone can energize me, even though it does use up a bit of energy to do it. It actually re-energizes me as well and gives me that boost that I need. So it's about having spent some time sort of just keeping a note of how I'm feeling, how things react to my body, things like food and drink as well. I had to pay real attention to how my body reacts to different food and drink as well. And then applying that to my daily life has been what's really helped me.
Great. And that's really good advice and a good way to do it because I think when we're all very busy and caught up in normal life, it's easy to just overlook those things or know that we're maybe not feeling our best, but then forget, when did it start? Actually, what feeling did I get? And, you often reach a point where you think, oh, I'm really feeling, whether it's bloatingness on a regular basis or that exhaustion or brain fog or something, but then you just forget, don't you, what might have started it, and if there's any patterning when it shows up, like time of day or, as you say, something you've eaten or not eaten and so on. So yeah, brilliant tip, thank you. So I'd love to just start a bit with chatting about your own journey to being diagnosed and how that came about and how it felt for you when you weren't feeling good, but you didn't know what was wrong and you were still trying to work and have that pressure of being an employee hanging over you.
Yeah, it was a really long journey for me because when I was in my 20s, I started to feel issues with my health. I had a very, very busy life. I was working abroad a lot of the time, working long hours, and then there's also quite a big social life as well. So it was a busy time, and I felt that I wasn't able to keep up with my colleagues and my friends, and I thought there was something wrong with me in terms of just lack of stamina, basically. And so I started to make changes, listen to my body a bit more, um, to the point where I got to where I was working and then I was resting. There was not much else going on. I was all I could do was get through a day, one day at a time, and then just crash in the evenings, crash at the weekends. And again, I still very much thought it was me that was the problem, that I just didn't have what it took to be an adult, as it were. And I remember having a conversation with somebody where I just said to them, "Do your legs and arms ache all the time?" And they said no. And I was like, oh, maybe there is something more to it. So I spoke to doctors, and they very much said that they did blood tests and things like that, but the conclusion was that I was just working too hard. So I changed jobs, got a slightly less stressful, still a very busy job, but not as stressful. But the problems were still continuing, and it was getting worse and worse. And it got to the point where I literally could not do anything but work, and I was even struggling with working, and just backwards and forwards to the doctor, different tests. Other issues started happening. I started having gastrointestinal issues, lots of migraines. Everything was hurting, and I still wasn't really getting any answers at all. And it was very much believed that it was in my mind, or it was stress, or I was just working too hard. And I didn't feel like I was really being taken very seriously, but I kept pushing anyway. And eventually I was diagnosed with ME. I was told to take 3 months off work. And when I took the 3 months off work, my body just stopped working completely. I got to the point where I could barely do anything. I spent most of my time in bed trying to get to just around the corner. I had to shop around the corner, and just even trying to walk around the corner to the shops was almost impossible. I think my body just, when I gave it permission to stop, it just decided that that was it. It was going to just properly stop. And over 3 months, I started to get a bit better, but not amazingly. And so I went back to work on a slow return to work basis. But I just knew that I couldn't work full time, and unfortunately, I had to leave my job as a result of that. I did then take some time out. I then managed to get another part-time job, which was much better, but I knew that I could never have the career that I had previously, because I could never return to working those long hours, the traveling or anything like that. My body just wasn't able to do that. And I subsequently heard about a condition called POTS syndrome. I happened to have had a chance conversation with somebody, and then my dad had seen a newspaper article about it as well. And I had an incident where I'd fainted when I was looking around my daughter's school before she started it, in front of the headmaster, which was very embarrassing. And happened to mention it to a physiotherapist who insisted on me going to the doctor to have some tests to look at why I was fainting. And so I had already had a test. It's called a table tilt test, where they basically you lie horizontally for a certain amount of time, and then they tilt you to 70 degrees, and then see what happens to your heart, to your blood pressure, and all that sort of thing while you're in that condition, and how you feel. I felt absolutely terrible during the test and afterwards, to the point that I went to a cafe afterwards just to try and unwind, and I couldn't even order a coffee because I just couldn't get the words out. And I had a message from my consultant, my cardiologist, saying that I had something called vasovagal syndrome, which is very, very common. It basically means that when you stand up, your blood pressure falls. And you just have to sort of take care of that, get up slowly and things. But between having the test and getting the results, I had this newspaper article from my dad, and I had this chance conversation with somebody who had both suggested POTS. And so I ended up asking for a phone call with a consultant, and I said to him, could it be this condition? And he said, I've already diagnosed you with vasovagal syndrome, which is very common. Why would I then think it might be something more rare? And I said, well, would you mind just hearing me out? I'd just like to talk you through my symptoms, because literally my symptoms matched every one of the ones I'd read about with this POTS syndrome. Unfortunately, he listened to me, and he said that he would go and look at my results again of my table tilt test. And he eventually came back and said later the same day, yes, you're right, you have got POTS syndrome. So I then got referred and had lots of autonomic testing, and took about a year to see my consultant, who was the POTS consultant was absolutely amazing, who then also suggested that I might have something called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, which is a hereditary syndrome, which basically means your connective tissue in your body isn't working correctly. And so where you have collagen in your body, where you have connective tissue, none of it's working. So that affects your joints, it affects your muscles, it affects your heart, your circulation, everything basically. And it turns out that I had that as well. So it was a very, very long journey. I think it probably I think I probably had Ehlers Danlos when I was a child. I had lots of joint pains, growing pains when I was growing up, and I think it was all as a result of that. It just took a long, long time to
Mm,
realise. So I eventually got to the point where I knew what was wrong with me. I also knew that working full time for somebody else, um, and having a successful career wasn't going to work for me, in the long term. So that's when I had to start thinking about a different path to take.
mm. God, yeah, what a long journey. And quite scary, isn't it, to think that if you weren't someone who felt able to push back with that consultant, that that would have been overlooked and that would have been the end of your diagnosis. You know, it's like, no, this is the label that is on you. That's what you've got. This is how we move forward. And you'll know there's lots of people who will be misdiagnosed or just not diagnosed at all because they take the word of what the doctor says as being gospel, because we look up to bureaucracy, and you know, most of us anyway, we've been brought up to respect people in those positions of authority. So well done you for pushing that. And it's kind of like the universe had sent a message to your dad with that article, you know, and that was
Yes.
read by him, and then he passed it to you, because again, neither of you probably knew what POTS syndrome was until seeing it in that article.
Absolutely, it was
Mm.
pure luck. I think I'd had a test probably about 10 years prior to that, a heart test, which I think did show that I had POTS syndrome, but it wasn't picked up at that point,
Wow.
unfortunately. So, but yeah, it was really lucky that I had that two people mentioned
Mm.
POTS syndrome to me during while I was waiting for those test results. Otherwise, I think I probably still wouldn't be diagnosed.
Mm. And so obviously that we're talking years and years here of you not feeling well, struggling massively with your health and having lots of hospital doctor visits, tests and so on. And you were working as an employee in different capacities for most of that time. So how did you manage to navigate not feeling well and, you know, having to go for tests and appointments and so on whilst turning up and performing at work?
Yeah, I don't think I did an amazing job, to be honest. I think, not in terms of looking after myself. I think I'd always prioritized my job.
Mm.
I was very nervous initially about talking to my employer about it, because I didn't want it to impact my career. I was on a fast track path, to senior management, and I was very concerned about what sort of impact it would have if I admitted that I was struggling with my health. So I was reluctant to talk about it. And that's something that's going forward now, is I advise people to talk to their employers, because often there are adjustments that can be made to help people to continue to work. But at that point, it wasn't something that I'd even really considered as an option. I
Mm.
thought I just had to get on with it. So I put my social life, my family life, everything on hold, really, just to keep my job. And thinking back on it now, I think that was the bad choice, because I think that's why my health got so bad, because I didn't listen to my body. I just pushed and pushed and pushed until I got to the point where, as I said, I took the 3 months off and pretty much collapsed, because my body was at breaking point at that moment.
Yeah, I've got goosebumps actually as you've said that, because that's similar in my story with my anxiety, and I had several physical health problems as well, which I hid from work. Again, like you, from fear of being labelled, you know, as somebody that's got something wrong, and oh God, she's going to cost us if we promote her, you know, she's going to end up not being reliable, and so on and so on. And it does put more pressure on you. I you know, was just in survival mode at the time. And I think that's like your story and lots of other people. You just think, I have to keep going, I have to keep going. And obviously, different topic, but we're seeing this now in a lot of women who are struggling with their menopausal symptoms and journey, and fearing speaking up about how much they're struggling it, you know, because for many of us, we don't have a choice to not work, you know, we have to financially earn a living, and so we've got that pressure and so on. And it's like you say, you just think, well, if I can just keep working, but then that just keep working actually means that's running your life, because that's all you're able to do is work and survive outside of work, doing what you need to do for your home and family, kids, but not much else outside of that, and certainly making your physical and mental health worse along the path. So Something I wanted us to talk about, which I know we chatted about a bit before, was the terms that are used. So you've mentioned three different diagnoses there, haven't you, with the ME, the POTS syndrome, and the
Ehlers Danlos.
Ehlers Danlos. Right. So, like the term chronic illness is an umbrella term for so many different illnesses and diseases, isn't it? And then disability, and yeah, kind of how do you define those, and what is classified as a disability? Because lots of chronic illnesses now also fall under that, certainly when it comes to like policy and legislation in the workplace.
Absolutely. So a disability is a long-term condition that lasts at least 6 months and which has um, a big impact on your daily life. So for a lot of people with chronic illnesses, it will definitely be classed as a disability.
Right.
For me, I would say that my health conditions are definitely a disability because they do have a big impact on my daily life in terms of how I manage my time and how it affects my pain levels and how I have to adjust to live with my conditions.
Mm. And I think that word in itself, disability, and certainly the word disabled, can feel like scary words to use. Even, this is me speaking personally, that you don't want to risk offending someone, or in the world we live in, coming across, yeah, I can't think of the word for it, like un-PC, saying something that is offensive to someone, and that isn't the right definition, if you like. And so that's interesting, you're explaining how that disability label, if you like, is assigned to many chronic illnesses, or other illnesses in general. Like menopause now in the workplace can be defined as a disability if, as you said, the symptoms are prolonging over 6 months and impacting someone's ability to live a normal life, and be able to go to work normally. So one of the things you are doing is trying to remove some of the taboo around these labels, aren't you, and make it more clear, like, what a disability is, and raising awareness of chronic illnesses, because they are massively on the rise with being diagnosed, aren't they? It's a huge problem, especially in women as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 20% of people have a disability, and 1 in 3 people have a long-term health condition. And as people get older, obviously, you're more likely to get
Mm.
a long-term health condition as well, chronic illness. And I think people don't realize how prevalent they are. If you were to pass me in the street or even to meet me at a networking event or something like that, you would have probably realized that I had chronic illnesses or disability because it's completely non-apparent. But that doesn't mean that I'm not in pain. It doesn't mean that I'm not really struggling with fatigue. It means that it's not noticeable at all. And I really want to try and raise awareness of the fact that a lot of people are living these conditions, but the people around them might not necessarily realise that that's the case.
Mm. And what are the most common chronic illnesses?
And there are so many different chronic illnesses, but there are conditions such as multiple sclerosis, there's chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia,
Yeah.
there are rheumatoid arthritis. There's just a whole range of different conditions that affect people and their long-term health. So I think there's over 6,000 rare diseases, and that's not considering the more common ones. So there are an
Mm.
awful lot of different conditions out there that affect people. You've got things like Crohn's and colitis as well. There's just a whole range of different conditions out there, and
Mm.
I'd say most of them aren't apparent, so you wouldn't realise that somebody was suffering from them.
Mm-hmm. And all of the ones you've said there, I think most people have heard of, even if they don't know exactly what they are. Like rheumatoid arthritis. I doubt many people would know that that's classified as a chronic illness, and that's someone who's struggling with that, and it's interfering with them and their ability to live a normal life, would then, be classed as having a disability. So I think that's really interesting. And how are you finding having conversations with organisations on this? Are they being much more receptive to understanding this, and are they able to support their employees, or is that something that's still a real challenge for a lot of businesses?
I think one of the challenges for businesses is that they don't realise the extent of the problem. And I think, like both you and I mentioned, we didn't
Mm,
disclose the fact that we had health issues while we were working for fear of the repercussions. Would we lose our jobs, or would we not get the promotion that we wanted as a result of disclosing that we were struggling with our health? And so I think a lot of people find that employees are leaving because they aren't able to cope and they're going
mm,
to find another place of work where maybe they can cope, without actually disclosing that they've got a condition. So really, it is important that organisations create a culture where people feel confident to ask for support when they need it. There's a lot of help that can be given in terms of reasonable adjustments. Things like access to work can provide solutions as well in order to help people remain in employment. So creating that culture where people feel that they are open, and able to ask for the help that they need can really help organisations to retain staff, and reduce sick level and increase productivity as well. Because if somebody is supported in the right way, then they're going to do a really good job as well. And if somebody is working in an organisation where they are able to ask for support and are able to receive that support, then they're more likely to stay in that employment and be really loyal as well. Because if you know you're going to be treated well, then you're going to stay there, rather than moving into another organisation where you don't know how you're going to be treated. So it's really important that that culture exists and that people
mm.
can ask for support and then be given that support.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. I think there's a couple of things coming through from your story and what you've just shared there. In that, the first thing is that self-awareness of really noticing what's going on, and if you feel as though things that are changing and happening to you physically or mentally, you're starting to take note of and pick up on, and then seek help, and to seek the right help and not be afraid also to push back. Because I think most of us would agree at the moment, our healthcare system in the UK, and I'm not sure it's any better in some of the other developed countries, like the US, is facing a bit of a crisis point. It's hard to even get an appointment, and then you're on the clock with the appointment and you've got to go fast and it's only one thing. And many of these types of illnesses have lots of symptoms attached, so it's making sure that you are pushing and advocating for yourself to get heard, be heard, and have tests and investigations and so on to get what you feel is the right support and then diagnosis. And then being really open at work and not being fearful of repercussion, which I know is easier said than done because some companies aren't that forward thinking or supportive. But I guess we have to be part of the process to bring that change about. And so, if anyone is a manager or leader or business owner and so on, it's thinking about, how do my team feel about coming to work and opening up about something that's wrong with them? Because I know in my workplace, it was said, oh, we have an open policy and we're all, here to support each other, and we want people to share mental health problems. But there was still a massive stigma attached to it. It's all well and good saying it, but the culture didn't feel like it was one that would accept someone anyway of a higher position who had what I thought, was something wrong with them. So yeah, I think, and then this leads us nicely on to the policy change that you're part of. So you're on the board. I've forgotten what the term is, on
The
the committee with the
steering
lilac
board.
review, the steering board. That's a
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I'd love to, because you've been personally asked by the government to join this board and be part of a very, very crucial, hopefully, big policy change that's going to impact hundreds of thousands of people. So yeah, tell us, I know some of it you can't share, but a bit about that.
Yes, certainly. So the Lilac Review is looking at disability and entrepreneurship, because there has recently been a study, with Small Business Britain and Lloyds Bank, which looked at the challenges faced by disabled entrepreneurs, which shows that 25% of all entrepreneurs are disabled,
Wow.
and the struggles that they face. And there's a lot of inequalities faced between the people who are disabled and those who are not disabled, to the point where, although there's 25% of people, business owners are disabled, I think they only bring in 8% of the revenue for all businesses. So there's a big disparity between that. And it's important that things are put in place to support disabled entrepreneurs. So we're running a review at the moment. It's going to be a 2-year review looking at what the struggles are and trying to come up with solutions. So looking at things that the government can do and big organisations can do to better support entrepreneurs with disabilities. Looking at things like financing, looking at what supports can be given as well. So it's a great project, and we've just been doing some focus groups, hearing from different people with different types of disabilities to hear what they've been struggling with and what sort of help that they would need going forward. So it's a really exciting time to be involved in that, and it's something I'm very passionate about because I've been supporting entrepreneurs with chronic illnesses for the last 5 years. So it's great that there's a big push now to try and make these changes happen.
Oh, that's brilliant. And that's really astounding, actually, isn't it? That 25% of entrepreneurs have a disability, and then that takes you back to the conversation we've just had about being able to be an employee. And do you think, obviously in the work you've done over the last 5 years, is that something that's come through? And a lot of people have had to leave employment, but obviously need to still earn money. And so they're set up as a self-employed person. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yes. I think often because a lot of organisations have quite strict sick leave policies, maybe you can only be off 3 times in a year and then you get on a performance improvement plan. That can be problematic if you've got a chronic illness. So, for example, I have migraines. And if I had to go into a place of work 5 days a week, it's quite possible that very soon after I started work, I would probably hit that 3 times because you cannot travel, you cannot drive if you've got a migraine. It's difficult to get a train if you've got a migraine. So if you have to take time off work and then you're getting penalised for that, and then the additional stress if you're on a performance improvement plan often mean that people have to leave the workplace, that they're not able to keep that job. And so the beauty of running your own business is that you have a lot of flexibility. You can work the hours that suit you. You can take time off when you're not well, and you can work when you are well, and you can
Mm-hmm.
work wherever you want to. So you might work from bed sometimes if you're not feeling great, but you can still work. And I think having your own business can be quite empowering because it's really hard if you do lose your job because of your health and you feel quite lost. And I know for me, starting my own business gave me that hope back again. I'd had my future all planned out. I knew what I was going to be achieving when I was in employment, and then suddenly it was all taken away from me. And at that moment, I lost my hope for the future. I just didn't know what my life was going to look like. And starting my own business gave me that back again. It gave me that ambition back again. It gave me that hope for the future back again. And it's probably the best thing I've ever done. So I think it can be really empowering for people to start their own business. But you need to do it in the right way. I started my first business, wasn't the right business for my health. I was running bath bomb parties, making kits, making products, and I loved the business, but it wasn't right for my health. There's a lot of repetitive movement and having joint issues that caused massive issues for my shoulders, to the point where I ended up in hospital one morning because I couldn't move either of my shoulders and I was in agony. Um, and then running parties when you've got something like POTS isn't great either because the amount of energy it takes can be incredibly draining. So it wasn't the right business for me. I tried to find support. I tried to find advice on running a business with a disability and chronic illness and couldn't find anything out there, which was what led me to start my business in the first place, was because I thought there's something missing here. We need to be supporting people with these conditions. I can't be the only person here struggling. So I set up the Entrepreneurs Against the Odds Facebook group, and people started joining and saying, this is just what I need. Why does nothing else like this exist out there? So it was definitely the right thing to do, and has led me to starting this business as well.
And you talk so passionately and beautifully about it. Like everything you said there, I can just imagine you standing on a stage speaking about and being really inspiring, because you're right. And like there was kind of a light bulb moment as you were talking, in that, yeah, there's one part of the problem, if you like, that is helping businesses, organizations to better understand chronic illness and disability and make put policy improvements and support and guidance and so on in place, because we should have people who have chronic illness or disabilities be able to go into a workplace as an employee and do a job if that's what they want to do. And for some people that will be, what they need. They won't want to run their own business for lots of different reasons. So there's that part of the puzzle. But then the other part, as you say, is really empowering people who feel like, there may be a different way. And this is for everyone, actually, when it comes to entrepreneurship. We've all generally been brought up with this story of finish school, maybe go to college, university, get a job, get your paycheck, pay into your pension, clock in every day, that kind of story. Certainly that was me, not knowing what else is out there, but really opening the doors for people who could be under enormous stress. And as we talked about, that extra pressure and pull on their health because of what they're facing with this chronic illness or disability. And so when we're living in a world with chronic stress and a stress epidemic, I think now more than ever, we need to be shouting about this and helping people to see, first of all, that this is an option for them, but secondly, make it easy to have this option open and get into it and make it work for them. And there's certainly people I know who could benefit from your advice and inspiration. So that's brilliant. And that kind of leads us on to what I wanted to wrap up with a bit is about what you do to support yourself, because I talk to a lot of female entrepreneurs about putting themselves on their strap plan when it comes to their health. If we aren't healthy as business owners, then as I say, we ain't got a business, because if we can't run it, and turn up and do that work, then we're not going to be able to get the clients, sell the thing, whatever it is that we need to do. And so I'd just love to know a little bit from you, Sarah, because I know when we chatted, you said, there's lots that you do now to help your health be the best that it can. And you gave us a little bit of an insight at the beginning, but are there any other things you do and you help other people that make a big difference to be able to run your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mantra is always prioritize your health, and then your business will really benefit as a result of that. So every Monday in my group, I ask people what they're doing for themselves this week and how they're going to put that into their diary, into their to-do list, so that it's actually not at the bottom of the list. I think when people have their own business or they're working hard, they don't prioritize their health because it distracts from the work that they're doing. Whereas actually, if you change it around, put in your well-being activities first and then plan everything else around that, it can mean that actually what you're doing when you're working is a lot better quality. Because if you've got energy, if you're feeling well, then the work that you're producing is going to be much better. If you're on the back foot and you're struggling with your health and you're struggling with tiredness and you're not putting yourself first, then your business is really going to suffer. So turning it around, putting your health first, planning everything into your to-do list in your diary, and then building business around that is really important, I think.
Yeah,
And
great
then
tip.
Yeah, and then I talk to people about how they can sort of look at different types of self-care exercises as well. So depending on how you're feeling, sometimes you might need self-care where it energizes you. So putting on some nice music that you love that energizes you could be good, and talking to a friend can be good. Whereas other times you might need something that's a bit more calming. So maybe going and reading a book or lying down and having a nap, or sometimes you might need just a mental health boost. So turning on the TV and watching a comedy for 20 minutes can give you that boost that you need for the rest of your day. So I always make sure that my lunchtime is a non-negotiable, and I take time during my lunchtime, depending on how I'm feeling, either to have a lie down or to go and watch something on TV or go for a walk, depending on what sort of energy I need, and really paying attention to that. And I will always try and prioritize my well-being first and then fit business around that. And I also find that if I know that I'm going to have a draining meeting, for example, if I'm delivering some training, or if I've got to go to London and take part in a meeting that's going to be quite draining, I then know that beforehand I need to take time to sort of get that energy levels up, and that time afterwards to recover. So maybe the next day I might take the day off just to really try and recover from that, and allow my body that time to sort of process the adrenaline and calm itself down.
Oh yeah, and that all links to what you start with about being very attuned to your own body and how you're feeling. And I think a lot of what you've said there is great advice for anyone. That's what I'm advocating is when you are strong, your life will be better. That goes without saying. When you're stuck in survival mode, it's going to feel like a slog, and it's going to really take its toll on you. But a lot of this links to mindset and guilt that many of us have around taking time, like you said, making sure you prioritize a lunch. But for many people, they have guilt over that. I know even from my days, working at Nike and in the office, there were people who would never take a lunch break. And when you chat to them, like, oh, I can't, I'm too busy. And, you dig into it a bit more. And then it would come out that they'd feel guilty then that maybe other team members were working too hard and all those things. So I think there's a lot of mindset work to like you say, to know, well, it's okay today to take time off because yesterday I had a very full day. Did that take a bit of work and getting used to kind of that self-acceptance and compassion?
Absolutely. I think for me, I noticed that if I just kept going and kept pushing myself, I'd get to the point where I'd be sitting at my computer and not achieving anything. Or if I was trying to write a blog, for example, and I hadn't taken time to rest, it was taking forever to write. I might sit down 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock still be working on it, where if I prioritize my health first and then sit down to write my blog, half an hour later it can be completed because I've got the right energy for it. So I realized that actually taking that time for me was actually beneficial for my business because it meant that my work was getting done a lot quicker and so a lot better quality as well. So I think it was that realization that really helped me. And
Mm.
I've ditched the guilt now. It's like I know that if I don't look after my health, then I've got no business. So I've got to put my health first. And if it means that my deadline has to shift by a day, then so be it. When I'm working with clients, I sort of explain that I give myself bigger deadlines than I need. So when I'm talking to clients, like if they've got a piece of work, for example, if they're a copywriter and they know that it'll take them 2 days to do it, I would suggest talking to their client and saying, I'll get it back to you in 5 days, because it then buys them some time. So if they've got to take time out, they've got some time to catch up. And most clients will be happy if you say it'll come back in 5 days. And then if you can actually turn it around and give it to them in 4 days, then they'll be really delighted because actually you've delivered better than had expected. Whereas if you say it's going to take 2 days and then you deliver in 4 days, they're going to be very disappointed. So managing client expectations and giving yourself that more time can enable you to really look after your health and prioritize your well-being without feeling guilty about how it's going to affect your client relationships.
Mm. Oh, such great advice. And again, this is for everyone, regardless of where your health is at right now. Having these kind of tools in your toolkit is so powerful. That self-awareness and self-compassion, and then planning some of what Sarah's explained, about how you're going to work, when you need to rest, what big things you might have coming up, what big actions or activities you need to do, and what will that mean afterwards, that you're not just backing up meeting after meeting and thinking that you can perform at your best, every single one of them. And certainly for me, that was how it was expected to be in corporate. There was never kind of any thought of, oh well, they've just been to conference for a whole week and every day is really long and there's a lot of play as well as a lot of work, and so we can't expect them to come straight back the following Monday and get into business as usual. But that's exactly what it was expected. And I think hearing you, it's like crazy that businesses can think we're able to perform like that. And obviously now we're learning more and more about how we work as humans, full stop, and especially as women with our hormonal health, that we can't be at the same level and same level of performance all of the time. So I love how you've just explained that, and it really feels as though you've taken the illnesses you have and the diagnosis you've received and stepped into owning those to really empower yourself to live this strong and healthy life. So yeah, I love how you've shared all of that. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Nicola. Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's important to sort of really take charge. I think no one else is going to look after your health for you, so you need to be the owner of your health and look after it the best you can, despite the problems that you might be facing.
Definitely. Great advice. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, Sarah, I know you've got your own podcast as well, and you mentioned the group. I'll pop everything into the show notes, but if you want to let people know where they can find you and connect.
Yes, so it's My business is called Excel Against the Odds, and the podcast has the same name as well. And then there's a free Facebook group called Entrepreneurs Against the Odds for business owners with chronic illnesses.
Fantastic. And yeah, just good luck with the government. I'm sure there's some exciting things coming, but I think with you on there and hearing your passion and real talk as well, you're bringing, that real person's perspective to, I'm sure, a lot of people who haven't had that same lived experience that you've got. So yeah, keep up the passion and the fight.
We will do. Thanks, Nicola.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sarah.